This is our panel on DevSecOps show and tell. So we all have decided that fixing security vulnerabilities is very important. We also believe that preventing them from occurring in the first place is very important. And security people are not usually the ones who are writing the code, who actually have access to fix the vulnerabilities in the code. We actually have to collaborate with our developer and engineering friends. And sometimes that goes well, and sometimes that goes not so well. So today, we've got Andrew, Jack, and Alex. We did not put you in the order as the slide shows, but I think people can figure out who you are.
I'm Andrew. Jack.
Because I don't want to miss anything in your introductions, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves. Please tell us, what is it that you're doing today? And what have you done in your past that folks may find interesting? Jack, we'll start with you.
All right, I'm Jack. What have I done in my past that's interesting? Carolyn did a podcast on me that was the best podcast in the world, by the way. I've had a very weird past. So I started in security when I was 15, full-time professionally. And I've gone up and down and done a bunch of different things since then, but it's all been security. So I have about 26 years experience in the industry. And very recently, I was serving as a CISO for Booknook, doing their full GRC program and their security. And I didn't like it. So I was down in Mexico, and I just something, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna try to figure out what to do. So now I'm full-time investing in secondaries markets. I do consulting. I'm building 2 consulting verticals. I'm advising about 16 companies and mentoring several individuals. So I'm trying to find a new transition into a space that takes me to a level where I no longer have to deal with the mundane.
Thank you so much for joining us here. And Jack's actually been a part of our PTAC. Alex Shulman.
Thank you. My name is Alex, and I'm leading the cloud security consulting practice of EY in the Americas. Previously, I led cloud security at Citibank. Overall, I'm coming from software development background, and this is why I'm excited about this discussion today. I'm in software development now more than 22 years, actually 24 now, sorry. I have a PhD in computer science. I led software development teams, and then I shifted to cloud security from the cloud angle, from actually developing security features for clouds, then developing security products for clouds, and then I moved to Citibank to actually run them to protect the environments. So I'm super excited about this connection between developers and cybersecurity teams, because eventually we have the same goals. Thank you for inviting me to talk today.
We are so delighted that you're here. Alex and I became friends during the pandemic, and today is the first day we get to meet in person. Speaking of folks that I got to meet in person for the first time today, Andrew Obadiah, Cobalt CISO. Isn't that super wild? We live in a super weird world.
Yep.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I'm Andrew Obadiah. I'm the CISO for Cobalt, responsible for InfoSec and IT as well. Prior to Cobalt, I actually started my security career with the Big Four. So I was there with KPMG for close to 8 years. And right before Cobalt, I was with the bank, BBVA. So I have close to 20 years in the cybersecurity space, and I've worked in pharmaceutical, financial, manufacturing, and then startup as well. So very happy to be here.
I'm super excited. We're going to get started with a controversial statement. And I'd like to ask each of you to tell me what you think about it. And Alex is going to go last because she has the strongest, I think, development persona. And so the question is, what do you think about this statement? More and more developers want to prioritize cybersecurity in their work.
Okay, you want me to go? Yeah, I'll say, well, if you had asked me this 4 years ago, I would say no. But in the last decade or so, there's been a shift in that mindset. So I would say the answer to that is yes. But that said, there's still a good segment of the developer team that sees security as a bottleneck in their process. So I think from that perspective, well, when you look at it today, and from my experiences, what we've done to really shift that mindset is really collaborating very well with them, identifying champions within that space that could help, scale security across that environment, because it's almost impossible for you to do it. It's usually one security professional to about 50 developers. So the only way you can really scale that is to kind of shift the mindset and try to build into that space and ensure that security continues to be something they consider as they go through the developmental process. So I would say the answer to that is yes today, but a few years ago it would have been no.
I think it was like 1999 or 2000, I worked in a telco closet with a bulb hanging from the ceiling that you like, with a string that you pulled down, right? I was not cool at the company because they didn't like security. Recently, I've worked for companies that were dealing with international privacy regulations, they were dealing with EdTech privacy regulations, and they were gung-ho security because it was ethical. They wanted to do things secure, they wanted to secure the customer data, they cared about their customers. The problem was they were also competing with product priorities. So the product team is telling them, pump this out, pump that out, and they're being evaluated based on KPIs that are relevant to security. At the same time, they want to remain interested in security, so they want to invent things. They want to write code that's secure code, but sometimes they'll do reinvention of tokenization systems, session management, hashing functions, data anonymization. That's a bad one, right? So, I mean, I agree with you. Like, years ago, there was a different security mindset. But nowadays, developers, they love security. The problem is how do we get them to focus securing their code in the correct ways? Because security's also transcended just information security, right? Now we've got this huge GRC aspect of it. Privacy regulations have really taken control. And they're nuanced, but they're technical, right? So they require somebody with a different type of just an engineering mindset. There was a recent example I have of a team of engineers that were gung-ho on anonymizing data using an Amazon library. I don't know technology very well. I'm kidding. But there was some Amazon thing that would do regex-based tokenization, anonymization. And I was telling the guys, I'm like, you don't need to do this. Please don't do this. It erases the audit trail. Like, it actually makes it less GDPR compliant. I even gave them documents that the working party did about pseudo-anonymization and anonymization. Finally, I have this big meeting with the CTO that says, you don't even have to worry about this because it's in our EULA. They cared so much about security that they didn't let the security officer tell them not to do security. Like, that is freaking backwards from how it used to be, right? So they love it. They love security now. It's just we need to get that one team mentality going or something.
So from the CISOs, yes, developers care about security. Let's pull back the curtain. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, so I would love to share from my experience because I was leading software development and I've interacted with clients. But before sharing from my experience, I wanted to ask how many of you are responsible for software products in the audience?
I was afraid to ask that.
So thank you. Let me ask you, how are you interacting with the clients? Are they prioritizing the security features in their discussions with you? How many of you heard this from your clients? Please prioritize this security feature over this business feature.
So could clients be like internal departments?
I think that's actually an excellent question.
That's what they are, right?
It is.
It depends, right?
Because,
that's a very good insight.
Because I can tell you that some of our product teams do, we're actually almost overwhelmed with requests to pen test new features and think, yes, I know.
I'm looking at your name.
Henry?
Just so I can talk to you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, so then the answer is internal clients, when it comes to organizations, are prioritizing security. But there were additional opinions in the audience. Is there agreement on this? What about external clients when they are buying software, when they're making this business decision to buy something, they're assuming that the product is secure, but are they requesting certain features? How many of you had this as a roadblocker for your products? Yes. Excellent. Thank you. So I think that's the answer to your question, because that's where this drive for cybersecurity should be coming from. I hope we'll be seeing more and more. Traditionally, we've seen this coming from financials. Obviously, all of the larger organizations, they need to do this due diligence, and they're typically checking all the products that they're consuming. We're still, I think we're still evolving when it comes to smaller technological companies. Not all of the smaller companies have the same cybersecurity products. And in many cases, they will be consuming software without doing this due diligence. But I think just playing this back to a question, this what will be determining the roadmap for developers, right? Once the customers will be asking for the security features, they will be becoming top priority for developers, and then developers will be prioritizing. So I'm super excited actually to see these positive answers from all of you. I think they're an indication of a good change that is happening. Thank you.
What a brilliant perspective, Alex. Thank you. And I'm also delighted to hear it as well, you know, as like a security person. I'm like, please, like, I want people to want it, you know. That's delightful. So some panels just talk about like fun, happy stuff, not this panel. So the next question is about stuff that happened that was not ideal. I wonder if you would consider sharing with us any stories about times that you've experienced or maybe you've heard of, maybe it didn't happen to you, where security and engineering, they actually didn't get along. What does that look like?
I mean, I think from my perspective, so the development process is very agile by nature, right? The mindset is always agile, and security is almost opposite of that. So that by itself already brings about some conflict already. So, I mean, in my experiences over the years, it's always difficult to demonstrate to developers the need for security, because to them, they feel they know the process better than you. They may hear you theoretically that, yeah, security is important, but when it comes to actually adopting it, it becomes very challenging. So I think getting them to a mindset where they recognize the relevance of security in the developmental process is always a challenge. So what I've done over the years is to consider the SDLC process more as a framework as against a process. When you consider it a framework, then you have no choice but to incorporate security into each of those stages of the SDLC process. So when you do that, you take the decision process away from them, and they have to follow the framework as against leaving it to them to decide when to bring security into it. Because if it's up to them, if there's no issue, they're not going to tell you until issue comes up in production or right before they deploy into production. So I think, yeah, that's one way I've kind of avoided those situations with them. You know.
All right, so I was doing diligence for this company called Endor Labs. Anybody heard of that? I love the security industry because there's so many acronyms. It's SBOM, right? SBOM is something. Software Bill of Materials. SBOM. Yeah, so Endor is building an SBOM thing. It's a digraph, and it maps software dependencies, you know, recursively all the way down to where your software essentially depends on every piece of code ever written. And I did due diligence on this company, and you know, talking to their CEO, and I heard one message, and then I went and read their marketing material, and the marketing material was about how security teams and development teams need, how the security team needs to empathize with the development team. They're iterating fast, you know, and what the CEO was selling to my syndicate was very different, right? That it was a security team focused tool. And it kind of got me thinking a little bit. I've seen things go wrong. I've seen things go wrong a lot. But I think they go wrong when there's this mentality where the security team is kind of competitive with the developer, right? Like where the security team is seen as like, you just hire them and they make things secure, something like that. But when I was doing this diligence, I was thinking, I've never had a problem empathizing with what developers do. Like, I mean, I know how developers work. I was a developer, and I don't think a lot of security folks have this problem. I think when it comes down to things going really wrong, it's subversion of governance, it's cultural issues, it's security leaders who don't know how to communicate effectively. I'm actually working with a company that is trying to get ahead of this problem, and they're selling like a thing where it's part of their GTM, right? They'll go in and try and jumpstart your security culture, and what it really is teaching the CISO how to better communicate to leadership and development teams, right? You know what I mean? Because these CISOs go in like, well, you can't do that, right? And then there's arguments and all that. So it's kind of like sometimes you get a reminder that we're all on the same team. But I mean, I've seen things hit the fan. I told you the story about the guys that almost wrote that code. Well, there was a lot of code that they didn't need to. I have a story about dictionary.com. I'm not going to tell it on stage.
Come on.
Do you want to hear it?
Yeah. You can't just
Okay.
leave us hanging like that.
I was going to say, you could come to me and ask about it, but I don't care. Okay, so dictionary.com, we had 2 employees. I've been the CISO of like over 100 companies at conglomerates. D.com was one of them. And I was kind of like an advisory VCISO to them because I didn't want to have a security officer. 2 contractors quit, terminated Amazon instances, or they didn't quit, they're fired. They terminated Amazon instances. Those Amazon instances resulted in the downtime of the app for 72 hours, which caused a SERP, a search engine response page, ordinality drop by 1. So it went from the number 1 to the number 2. That's a 30% decrease in revenue with no decrease in operating and capital expenses. So they went from a profitable company to an unprofitable company because they did not have proper segregation of duties and employee onboarding, offboarding security practices. And these were 2 disgruntled developers that had been fired that had over-permissive rights. I think that the entire executive team was nixed. I mean, there weren't very many of them. It's a dictionary, an online dictionary. Nobody here works for dictionary.com, right? Or IAC? I mean, you here work for IAC? Really? Okay, good.
Fascinating. And I think what Jack, you've brought up that I didn't expect us to be touching upon in this panel is there's sort of the good developer. What about the not good developer? What about the disgruntled developer? What about the person with malicious intent who has a lot of
Insider threat.
Yeah, insider threat. Very interesting. Alex, what are your thoughts? What have you observed or heard about maybe that didn't go so well between security and engineering?
Yes, so actually I would like to raise another topic, and I would love to hear everyone's opinion on this. Once again, as a developer, I had to fly over to foreign countries to be in front of clients for outages or operational problems. That's very unpleasant, so every time I was, at that time we had releases, every time before the release I was just double checking everything because I didn't want to fly over to be in front of clients explaining why we're having these problems. But I think right now we're building our CISO organizations, right? We're building all the cybersecurity teams, which is great, right? That's the right thing to do. But what I wanted to raise for a discussion is that when we have cyber events, then this is being handled by the CISO team. The CISO and his team members, they are getting this phone call in the middle of the night. So I just wanted to get everyone's opinion. Is this a good trend? Because in a way, then if, let's say, I am a developer, I have 2 issues. One of them is cyber related. Another is an operational issue. I know that for the operational issue, I will need to fly over. It will be me explaining to the client why we're experiencing this. Which one should I fix, right? I think that most developers just without thinking will pick up the problem that they will be presenting to the clients if it happens. I think it's just the way it is structured, right? People will always prioritize what is directly on their table. If I need to explain this outage, and when it comes to bugs, in most cases, the probability of this bug happening again is predictable, right? So developers can say, okay, let's say this, if there's some initialization problem, right? It can be 0 or 1 if it is not properly initialized. So 50% of chances of this problem reoccurring, then as a developer, I need to prioritize it, right? Then if we have some vulnerability that may be exploited or may not be exploited, unfortunately, I'm now representing cybersecurity. I wish everyone could prioritize cyber issues, but I'm just thinking out loudly, right? Can developers really always prioritize cyber issues? It depends. So I wanted to get everyone's thoughts, yes.
So my first thought is a developer should be put in that position.
Thank you.
This is why we have a framework. This is why we have architectural review boards, CABs, all of this stuff. The developer shouldn't be put in that position. Right? Nor should we want them in that position. That's my first thought. And it comes to your point, it's all about communication, right? That's why we have a hierarchy, we have the frameworks. And it's different in every organization. But if a developer feels that they're in a position they have to make a choice, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think developers should be making decisions like that. I mean, their role is to develop product. When there's a cybersecurity incident, I think the CISO should drive that effort. Even if it involves developers, I think CISOs are suited to deal with that. Putting a developer in a position to make decisions like that is just not a good idea, in my opinion.
So we need to have frameworks, right? And risk and cybersecurity teams doing this governance, and we need to have these governance processes controlling this.
Second point, and this is something I have we develop an identity access management platform, right? But one of the biggest challenges we have that in my role over GRC and security operations is there's a difference between an event and an incident. But again, this is what the framework is there for and why you have the processes in place. And people say processes slow down. In some cases they can, but if you don't follow the process, you get yourself in big trouble real quick. And then you have me in my role as the VP over all of this in front of customers when maybe I shouldn't have to because it was an operational issue. And so when you have an operational issue that you don't open up to, and the VP of security isn't, the customer is like, oh my gosh, is this bigger than I thought it would? So you got to be very careful.
Yep.
But again, this is why I think what you're talking about, you get that framework in place, right?
Yep.
And part of the process and automated, right? So that we're not, you're spot on. This is exactly right. We should not be putting people in this position.
I know.
And the more automation we can put in place,
Definitely.
right? Not even manual reviews, but automation, right? To check all these frameworks automatically as part of the pipeline, because otherwise we'll be ending up with these discussions. Thank you for raising this. Any other thoughts or experiences from the audience?
I have actually been, we have been in a position where we had the development team after we found stuff, pen test and all saying, we actually wanted to do it the proper way and to like make sure that it was right, but we were told to do like this easier thing instead. So it's not that uncommon to find people that actually want to do the right thing, but they don't have the room to be the ones making that decision, right?
They're told to do quick tactical solutions to keep their customers happy, right? And then they're not addressing the root cause and not really resolving the problem. Yeah, so I think actually that's the next question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank you for raising that.
Alex is just bringing in all of the really critical factors for us to consider, right? Who's making the decisions and who's making the requests? I just want to share an observation that I've had, which is sometimes effective security folks find like the champion engineers and then work almost like one-on-one with them to like, hey, like we're both trying to do the right thing, right? Like let's do it. And there's almost this way in which maybe the governance structure is not going to get the right thing to happen officially, but that this person can do it on the side. And I think that, unfortunately, that's one way for it to be effective. But if it is coming from an actual governance perspective, then there are benefits. Andrew set this up for us at Cobalt. Andrew, I wonder if you would share with folks, how did you set up the Information Security Steering Committee, and how does that work? What's the charter of that organization?
Right. So Information Security Steering Committee is really focused around risk, right? So what risk is across not just security-driven risk, but security risk that could impact security. So what we've done is identify key stakeholders within the organization and build that team around them. So we meet quarterly. In those quarterly discussions, we identify, big security initiative. We'll identify big risks that could impact different organizations within Cobalt, and then we address those, and then we propagate that information. The decisions that are made gets out to the rest of the organization that way. So the steering committee is really a place for us to kind of identify or discuss those key issues. What are the implications of those risks? How best can we mitigate those risks? What does this really mean for us as an organization? And then what can we do from that point on? So because we have all the key stakeholders involved in that steering committee, we're able to address it right there and come up with a decision, and then that decision is pushed out to the rest of the teams. So it's worked very well for us, Caroline.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Greg, for helping me with my sound issue. All right. What advice do you have for this room? I kind of jumped the gun a little bit there by asking Andrew to share about the Information Security Steering Committee. What other tips do you have to help things go better? How do we navigate all of these different priorities and requests and decisions that have to be made, and then the scale thing, right? Andrew put out a number there for us to consider, 1 to 50. If there's only one security person for every 50 developers, how do you scale this sort of thing? What advice do you have for us?
This is a huge one for me. So I've greenfielded a lot of security programs, and I love your GRC mindset. Because, honestly, GRC provides us with the framework that we can deviate from in fun ways too. But when I greenfield a program for a company, one of the first things I do is awareness training and GRC framework installation. A policy is not what most people think it is, right? Like a policy is just something that interprets statutory requirements. We don't have very much liberty there, and we're just trying to make it easier for the business. But one of the things that the policy in the GRC framework does is it defines the scope of the authority of the security team, which is actually bigger than most people think it is. Security team is generally responsible for, for customer response for availability, for example, right? A lot of availability incidents are security incidents by nature. But that's not my main course of action. What I really like to do is I like to go in and I like to be mysterious. And I also to be weird, so I think I joined Turnitin, which is a large academic integrity company. With we had a database of 1.5 billion free-form essays, and 50 million active student customers, and did business in 170 countries, with all kinds of unique privacy regulations. So if you want to talk about EdTech privacy regs, I can talk all night long about it. But
coming from the guy who, side note, I think has also read word for word the entire GDPR.
I've read a lot of GDPR, not all the working party docs, because there's like 8 million pages of them. I've read 109 FERPA cases one night.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah, FERPA's weird. It's weird.
What even is FERPA?
I don't know what it stands for. I'm kidding. I don't know what it stands for. But so what I do is I'll come into a company and I turn it in. They call me alpha male. No one called it to me to my face, but my boss kept telling me, he's like, they call you alpha male behind your back. So I generated like this mystique when I first joined, We got our SOC compliance, that set up a control framework. That was my GRC play, right? So that set up the rules and requirements that were externally regulated. And then I started doing some fun things. Phishing emails suck, right? Everybody hates them. So I would do like really acidine fun ones, but that would also be very effective. We had one about when we installed a webcam in the refrigerator, and I had like a 14% of the company enter their passwords in at a Fortune 500 company. Then I'll do presentations. I do like newsletters, things like that. Real light fluff stuff, because I need the entire company to be engaged in security. It's everyone's responsibility, right? The old way of thinking was you hired a security team and they made the company secure. That's not how it works. So I made it interesting, and I said, hey, you guys want to do security? And we formed a Tiger team, right? And so it's kind of like a steering committee. The Tiger team would meet monthly. We had hundreds of participants. People would present in the Tiger team that weren't security team members. I bring in FBI agents to speak in front of the company and the team members who get to do things with them. It was all about a cultural reset. Tabletop drills helped with that. We talked about tabletop drills earlier, right? Just engagement in a positive way, but also in a way that's productive and serious, right? And part of that really is just being intelligent about why security is needed, where the lines are drawn, what risks need to be taken. It has to be very well thought out. So while it's fun, it's not, you can't just make it fun if you don't know what you're doing. It's a nuanced thing.
Yes, from my side, maybe what I think is the most exciting thing that we're experiencing as an industry right now is that first we have good news. Developers like good software products. So we have a great opportunity to bring them to cyber through these high quality security products that are helping them to do things faster and easier. And I think that's the exciting change that is happening. First, cloud is helpful because cloud is easier to consume. Cloud is also, right now, the standard is that people should be managing cloud as infrastructure as code, which is also very well aligned with what developers are passionate about, having this high quality code that will manage the infrastructure. That's a great opportunity to add security as part of these pipelines. So this is why we're talking about policy as code as part of the deployment pipelines. And that's the most effective way. And I think cloud and cloud environments, they actually show to everyone that preventative controls are the most effective ones. Because most organizations, they started with cloud without the preventative controls. And then organizations brought cloud security posture management products and saw these dashboards that were all red. So they realized, okay, we can't manage cloud without infrastructure as code and preventative controls. This is what we're seeing across the industry right now. More and more organizations are saying, okay, the only way to manage our cloud environments is through infrastructure as code and policy as code as part of it. And they're taking all the frameworks and translating this to policy as code as part of the infrastructure. And this is exactly what all the developers are passionate about because we're talking about software that is making life easier. So personally, that's what I'm excited about. I think we have this great opportunity to connect and take this from high-level policies, control frameworks, all the way to this easy-to-consume code that will help everyone. So this is personally what I'm excited about. I think as an industry, we're undergoing this big change right now. Still a long way to go, because if we have a few minutes, we can talk maybe about policy as code. It's a complicated issue because we have too many instances of policy as code. It's policy in the cloud, it's policy in the security product, it's policy in the platform. And then if we need to do governance, we need to take all these policies and we need to align them to our frameworks and show that it's the same, we're compliant with everything that we should be compliant about. But personally, I think that's the most exciting change right now.
That's so well put. I mean, who here runs a CSPM, like Orca or Wiz? Only, really? Yeah? I mean, when I first installed that shit and turned it in, I'm like, what are you guys doing? But it's totally reactive. Right? Yeah, excellent point.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that is, whether you're on the developer side or the security side, if you haven't looked into this, I would say consider shift left concept as a security concept. It's really good. It allows you to consider security at the very initial stages of your SDLC process. It really forces you to adopt that. So if it's not something you've considered already, I think everyone should seriously consider that, because shift left, it changes the whole process. It kind of outlines what needs to happen from a security standpoint in each stage of your SDLC process. And collaboration is also important. Collaborate with your developers, ensure that you have these regular touch points from a security standpoint as well as your developers. This way you have a good sense of what's going on in that space, and you can, shift the mindset or culture. Somebody said shift the culture within that space. So the only way you can do that is to engage and collaborate with them. If you're not talking to them, you're not gonna know what's going on. So spending time and having somebody in that orbit from a security standpoint will certainly help shift that.